Hello friends, for today's video I wanted to have a very conversational, casual video, and there's going to be a few different topics discussed here. So first up, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into one of the questions that was in the mid-year book tag. I put that video up in June, as June is the middle of the year. So one of the questions is about what are some books that you really need to read by the end of the year. And I mentioned for that question that I would be doing a future video where I'm checking in and I can specifically address my 2024 TBR series that I wanted to either get caught up with or complete. So I thought I'd do a check-in with that, hold myself accountable about the ones that I said I was going to read and haven't yet, also pat myself on the back for the ones that I said I would and I have, and then also remind myself what those books even were, because sometimes you make those lists and then you completely forget. I write everything down, so I have no excuses to forget anything when it comes to book stuff. So I wanted to go through those things, and then I wanted to provide some updates about my second book that I have written, as well as the audiobook for the first one. I know some of you are really supportive and would like to hear those updates. I know some of you would like to hear those updates more regularly, but I do want my channel to stay focused on other authors' works and then topics that just in general have to do with writing, publishing, and representation of various themes and tropes and things like that within other works outside of mine. I don't want my channel to turn into just basically a place for me to market my stuff. However, I also recognize that some of you would like to have a little bit more information and so that you can know what to expect. So I'm going to provide that. And at the end of the video, I'm going to give a very brief home improvement disaster story. I'm not going to go super in depth. I could, because I have dates and so many notes written about some stuff that happened, but I figured we'd end the video with just kind of a personal, I was going to say fun story. It wasn't fun for us, but when I say us, I'm referring to me and my husband. I'm not referring to myself as us, but myself, my husband, and Luna Bear. It wasn't fun for us, or our neighbor, I should add. But anyway, maybe it'll be entertaining for all of you. At the very least, it'll be a cautionary tale in using Home Depot for window replacement. So we'll get to that. Anyway, starting with the book content though, I'll have timestamps if you'd like to skip ahead to any one particular topic, but kicking it off with the series that I said I wanted to get caught up with and complete. So first up, Storm My Archive. What I can say is that I am caught up with it for now because obviously Wind and Truth is not yet out and won't be until the end of the year. So this is one that I do technically still need to get to, and it is on my 2024 TBR still, but I am not counting that against myself because I can't do anything about it. Next up, we have Age of Assassins. I really enjoyed the first book in this trilogy, and I read it quite a while ago, and I really wanted to try and have this reminder for myself because if I wait too long, I'm probably going to forget. I am actually considering at this point rereading the first book to ensure that I don't miss important details when I continue on. However, I have not yet continued on, and I think that's one of the things now is I'm like, oh, it's going from 2 more books to potentially 3 more if I do commit to rereading the first book, so I think that's actually deterring me, but I do really want to continue on. I really loved the mentor relationship in this story. The setup sounds really similar, because I know this isn't as popular as Stormlight. The setup sounds really similar to Robin Hobb's Farseer trilogy, where you have a character who has somebody sort of take them under their wing, and then they get kind of caught up in the maneuverings of the nobility. But the difference, I would say, between this and Farseer and why this worked for me is because the character, I would say, while yes, they don't have the ability to have as much movement and agency within their own life, and that is sort of a theme within the story similar to Farseer, I like the main character more, and I actually feel like you see on page things happening. Not to say that nothing happens in Farseer, but Farseer is kind of like, they're going to be trained to be an assassin, and I think kind of a joke is, when are they ever being an assassin? You don't really get to see them actually doing the things that they're trained to do. And in the first book of this series, the mentor is the assassin, and they're sort of on a mission on behalf of a noble to seek out and eliminate a threat. So basically it's an assassin versus an assassin. And our main character is the apprentice to the assassin. So they just kind of derp around and go where their mentor goes, but they're sort of learning things in the meantime. So I want to see how they develop in books 2 and 3. I can't imagine they're going to be quite as angsty as Fitz, because Fitz in book 2 of Farseer is such an angsty boy. My goodness. So anyway, I'm really wanting to continue on with this trilogy. That was a long time to spend on that. Let's move on. So next up we have the Bloodsworn Saga, and the third book for this will be being released this year. However, it's not yet out, so once again, I can't really do anything about that. After that, we have Divine Rivals and Godkiller and Song of Silver Flame Like Night, and I have caught up with all of these or completed them because Song of Silver Flame Like Night and Divine Rivals were duologies. I have completed these. I actually technically had made my list, this list that I'm going through right now, before 2024 started. And then because the sequel to Divine Rivals, which is called Ruthless Vows, it did actually get released before I had the chance to record my video. So I even admitted, I was like, I technically already completed this one because it came out right at the end of 2023. And so I read it right around then. So I did technically already finish this one before I even recorded the first video. And then Song of Silver Flame Like Night, its sequel, Dark Star Burning Ash Falls White. I always have to kind of go through the letters in my head because in my notes I just have SOS and then FLN. So this one, it came out really early in the year, so it was quite easy for me to get caught up on this one. Plus it was just duology, so I just had one more book to go and I was done. And then Godkiller, I wasn't sure if there was going to be a third book in this series because there, for a while, on certain retailers, it would say 2 of 2 in talking about Sunbringer. And so then I was like, is this just going to be a duology? But it is going to be a trilogy. So I'm not done with the series, but I am caught up with as much as I possibly can be for now. And then next up we have Justice of Kings. So the series as a whole, there are 3 books. It's a trilogy. And I have read the second book, and then the third book is now officially out, and I need to pick it up still. So there has been progress made in this. I'm just not entirely caught up, and I'm kind of mad at myself. I should be caught up with this one, so shame on me. Next up, we have Winter Night, another one where progress was made. I read book 2, really, really enjoyed it, and I am so excited for book 3 because I've heard from a lot of people that it's their favorite in the trilogy, and that the folklore kind of really comes to the forefront in this one, so I'm really excited. I like this series a lot. I think when it comes to historical fantasy, that this author captures that incredibly well within this trilogy, and I can't wait to finally see how everything wraps up. Oh, next up, I should continue the clapping. I have to interrupt myself just to say, the other day, I don't even remember what I said, but my husband and I were leaving the library, and I said something or something came up, and my husband, he was like, yay! And I was like, you got that from me. You don't do that on your own. To be fair, I obviously pick up a lot of stuff from him because we live together and we've known each other for a really long time. But anyway, it was just funny seeing that come out of Sean because I was like, that's not a Sean-ism. That's from me. It doesn't matter. Anyway, Age of Madness, that's why I was getting excited anyway. I have completed this trilogy and oh my gosh, it's so good. I have gone on and on about how much I love it already in several videos, and I will likely be going on and on even more about how much I love it in future videos. It's so good. It's so good. And I am so sad that I waited so long to read it because at this point, when I finished it, I was like, I kind of just want to reread it though. And I felt so bad for the books that I picked up right after because they're not gonna be as good, you know? It's a double-edged sword. When you read a series or a book that is suddenly launched into your favorites of all time, you're excited, but then you're like, nothing compares, and then you're kind of bummed out. But that's such a enormous first world problem, right? To be like, this one book series I read was like really good, but the next thing's probably not gonna be. That's not a problem. That's not a problem. Moving on. Her Radiant Curse. This is, I believe, just one book that is a prequel to Elizabeth Lim's. She has this almost like shared universe across some of her works, and this is a prequel to the Six Crimson Cranes duology, and I just need to read it. And then I'll have read all the books in that world, and I haven't yet read that one, so I'm behind with that. She Who Became the Sun. I can't believe this is another one that I can't believe I haven't picked up because I really enjoyed that first book. It's very different in its perspectives and narrative decisions than a lot of other things I've read. It's historical fantasy in a way that I really enjoy, and I need to read the next one. That's all there is to this. Belladonna. I am caught up with this for now. I have read Foxglove, And I like Belladonna more, but I am caught up with, and I am curious to see what happens in the third one. After that, we have the Bridge Kingdom series, and I had just needed to read one more to be caught up with that, and I've done that, so I'm all caught up there. This Vicious Grace, this is a YA duology. I believe the second one is This Cursed Light. It's the last one, I think. And This Vicious Grace for me was, it does lean into fantasy romance, I would say, but it's not quite as smut oriented, I'll say. It is YA, so it'd be weird if it was. But regardless, I really liked the relationship between the characters. I liked sort of the friendship building and this almost found family that you get. I liked the twists and turns. I thought the plot was really fun. So I was really looking forward to the sequel. I just haven't read it yet. The Art of Prophecy. Oh, this is another one. I feel like when I read The Art of Prophecy, if that wasn't clear, that noise means I'm not caught up with it. But when I read The Art of Prophecy, I felt like I was one of the only people talking about it. I was saying, hey, this is so fun. It's really action-packed. It's really cool world building. It's a great mentor relationship, mentor-mentee. And then I was just eagerly awaiting the second one. And then, I don't know, the timing of when the next one came out just didn't work with me. I don't know what happened. I haven't read it yet, though, and I need to, and I'm annoyed. After that, we have Valdemar. So I, since reading Arrows of the Queen, have been saying I want to read more Valdemar, and have I? No, I haven't, and I'm bummed. So this one I'm counting as 3 books that I haven't yet read, because I want to complete the next trilogy in this series. I also had mentioned that I was planning on maybe rereading Queen of the Tearling, because I loved that first book. Never continued on, primarily because I was scared, because everybody says that trilogy ends really terribly. And then every time I mention that, all of you are like, it's not as bad as it seems. People just, I feel like it got sort of a reputation for a bad ending, but then once you've heard enough people say that, then you kind of are pleasantly surprised it's not as bad as you might have thought. So I'm hoping that's what happens. We'll find out. And then Castles in Their Bones. This is one where I am caught up with this for now. Oh, I didn't say I don't think about Queen of the Tearling. I have not started that reread. And then Castles in Their Bones. So I am caught up with this for now. I think technically, at the time I'm filming, the third and final entry of this trilogy will have either just come out or will be coming out soon, something like that. Because I looked it up and I saw it was coming out in June, which I didn't see that release date anywhere. So when I went to make this list, I was like, is the third one already out? And I discovered it was about to be. So, Castles in Their Bones. I am caught up with, maybe. But regardless, the third book, I think, will be coming out soon, and I need to pick it up. So, that's a fair amount of books left, but to recap, I completed the Divine Rivals duology, I'm caught up with Godkiller, I finished Song of Silver Flame Like Knights duology, I have made progress in Justice of Kings, that trilogy, the Winter Night trilogy, I have made progress, I completed all of Age of Madness, and I have got up with the Bridge Kingdom series, and I can't yet get caught up with Stormlight, because it's not out. I can't yet get caught up with Shadow of the Gods, and there's some other ones I think that I can't get. Yeah, Belladonna. I think that's the other one that I can't be caught up with just yet. So, pretty decent progress, I would say, but because some of them are books that I'm looking to do entire rereads and then keep going and basically read the entire series, that actually means I have 18 books left, maybe 19 if I do a reread of Age of Assassins. So when I put it like that, I'm kind of disappointed in myself. But let's move on. Let's get into some updates for writing things. So the second book in my series, the series is called The Dark Shores, and the first book is titled Peace and Turmoil. The second book, Remnants of Dawn, has been completed on my end since last year. I finished it last year, and I am very happy with it. I am in love with it. It's everything I wanted it to be, and I just need it to be polished and edited. So that is where it is currently at. The editing process is going to take a longer amount of time for a couple of reasons than the editing process would typically. One being it is a pretty large book. The length is roughly the same as The Well of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson, which I know some of you don't know how long that book is, but the Remnants of Dawn is around, I believe, 270,000 words. And there's a part of me that felt the need to trim because I know that's a lot, and I know that a lot of times authors can almost be a little self-indulgent when it comes to epic fantasy. It's epic, therefore it has to be long. That's kind of a joke. And there is a part of me that wants to ensure that what's there absolutely needs to be there or serves a purpose. But in my mind, that just seems like a number that it does need to be that long. But rereading it, which I did read through all of it, I reread the first book and then read through this, and I'm like, there's nothing I want to cut. Everything serves a purpose. I know the reason behind everything, the foreshadowing, the character development, and the ways in which characters are connected to each other. World building was really important for me to branch out with, but really it comes down to the characters. The characters are such a focus in this second entry. I think with epic fantasy, something that you're going to find a lot of times is the first books, they'll really suck you in and pull you in, like Way of Kings, I love. That's one of, for me, my favorite books of all time, but also a great first entry into an epic fantasy world. That said, not every first entry into an epic fantasy world is going to be that heavy right off the bat. Sometimes it is somewhat introductory because there is so much to introduce to people, and you want to ensure that people have their feet somewhat, at least firmly, on the ground before continuing on and branching out and expanding. And so for me, I feel I did that with the first book, but that there's so much more, and something I always wanted to do was somewhat replicate our experiences in real life with getting to know people. When you first meet somebody, there's a certain presentation that people put on. There is a certain way in which you see them and a certain way that almost their personality and their mannerisms and their views on things, there's a certain way that you internalize that, and then the more you get to know them, the more that changes and it deepens. And I really wanted to replicate that with these characters, and a lot of them really go through it in the second book. Plus, there's a lot more crossing paths in the second book. And so anyway, it was really important to me that I was ensuring, back to the editing process, that I was ensuring everything that was there needed to be there, because I knew that this would make the amount of time in the editing process longer the longer the book was. But I am really happy with it. I did not want to make enormous cuts, and so I sent it to my editor, and I was like, well, this turned out way longer than I was expecting, and she is the nicest editor in the world. She's also very good at what she does, and she is also a professional. You should definitely always get a professional editor. I just want to say that because sometimes people online will present things as critiques, which are separate from an actual professional edit, and if that's something you want to spend your money on, that's your decision. But just know there is a difference between somebody offering something like a manuscript critique and a professional editor offering editing services. So just want to throw that out there if you yourself are a writer. But regardless, so it's already going to take a decent amount of time because the manuscript is long. Second, Molly, who is my editor, that's her name, she, since editing the first book, which came out in 2019, since then has had 2 kids. And she is a freelance editor, so she is essentially self-employed. And she was really upfront with me that if she was going to edit my work, that it would take her so much longer because of things to do with childcare. Sometimes things fall through, which she did have happen. And just in general, being a working, self-employed parent. And for me, it was really important that I respected that. I have found that some of the biggest burdens lifted off of my shoulders have come from people that understand when things are not always tough, because having kids is not a tough thing necessarily. I think that's a really negative sounding word. It can be tough. You can go through tough times. That's not what I'm not trying to imply it's all peachy all the time if you're a parent. I just mean that there's a difference between like tough times like health concerns or the loss of a family member or something like that. There is a difference between that and having children. But my point being that I have found such immense relief when somebody is kind enough to say, it's no worries, don't worry about it. I understand that your situation is something that is just for this period of time, and I want to respect that, and don't worry about if you need to take a while or if you need to take a break. Those sorts of things. When people have offered that to me, it is... I'm getting weirdly emotional thinking about it, but it's so significant and it means so much. So I wanted to ensure that I extended that same level of understanding to my editor. So the month likely that I will get the manuscript back, if all goes according to plan, nothing with the kiddos on Molly's end comes up, if all goes according to plan, I will have the manuscript back by October. And that's great because it might sound like, oh, okay, so then it's polished and perfect by October and then it can come out in 2024 still. That number is even up in the air because the book needs then to be professionally formatted to ensure that the ebook files look good, that the physical print copies are not having anything weird going on with margins and things like that, which doesn't seem like it would take a lot of time. But when you have an editor, when you have a formatter, you want to ensure that they also have enough time to do their job. So it's looking like, I think what I'm planning on tentatively, and this is not for sure, and I will update if things change, but if possible, I would like to have the story itself in some form, which currently that form is going to be probably digital, be released in 2024, this year, and that way people that want to read it can. If you want to read an ebook version of it in some fashion on whatever reader you have, that is made available. And likely print versions will come out in 2025. I don't like the idea of breaking it up. I would prefer print and digital to be released simultaneously, but I also know that some of you have been waiting for a really long time. I know some of you are so sweet and you'll want to pick up the first book if you've never read it. It's down there. If you want, you might want to pick up the first book, read it, and then read the second and go right into it, especially with epic fantasy. Some people want to go right into it so they don't forget important details. And I don't want to have there be this even longer delay. So I kind of want to have that option where if you are really eager to read it, you can have it this year. And if you're willing to wait, you can have it in 2025 in print form. So that's my plan currently. We will see. I do want to have an audiobook done as well. So if I do this current idea of the digital first and then having the print, I could see the print and audiobook being simultaneous, possibly. I was so incredibly impressed with how quickly the audiobook was put together for the first one. Once it was officially started, I was baffled. I was blown away by how quick it was. Also, a little bit hurt internally by how much it costs. So if ever you're like, why don't self-pub authors have audiobooks done? If they want to be taken seriously, they got to have audiobooks done. It costs thousands and thousands of dollars to have an audiobook done. And that's not an expensive amount for audiobooks. That's the norm because there's a lot of things that go into it. You have to have a professional, basically voice actor, doing all of this work. They have to read through, they have to ensure they know exactly, especially in fantasy, how everything is pronounced, and they will do sometimes multiple read-throughs of the book before they even start, so they feel like they have a grasp on the characters, those sorts of things. Plus then there is editing that goes into the digital, making this file. So there's a lot that goes into it. So I understand the price. It's just, oh my gosh, is it take a while to save up for it? So I would love to be able to save up and try to have the audiobook for the second book come out around the same time as, at least, like I said, the print version, if possible. We will see about that, and I will keep you up to date. On that note, the audiobook for the first one, because I know some of you are probably curious. So as a result of having the second book likely not going to be released until either the end of this year or the beginning of 2025, what I don't want to do is release the audiobook for those of you that might want to read it for the first time or reread the first book, and then you have to wait a while before the second one is out. I want to kind of have that release be around the release of the second one. So if there's a change to that, I will also let you know, because maybe I'll try to have it where the first one's audiobook is more of like the beginning of fall, and then maybe like the digital of the second one, and then the print of the second one, all those sorts of things. So I know there's a lot that's up in the air, but I at least wanted to fill you in as to why I can't give concrete answers, and hopefully that is helpful and informative. I do want to say, oh my gosh, the artwork that is being done for this second book, because that was something I really wanted to have done for the second one. I have seen one piece that I can't share because it is mildly spoilery, because it transpires basically at the end of the book. So there is an artist that I have adored for so long. Their work is incredible. And when I say for so long, when Toss a Coin to Your Witcher was released from the Witcher Netflix adaptation that very few of us really like, most of us don't really like it, but it doesn't matter. That piece of music was a lot of fun and it was a big hit. And I did a violin cover of it. And for fun, I wanted to include artwork of some of the characters from Witcher, and she very nicely let me include her artwork in the video. So I have kind of been in contact with her for years, and I've always kind of dreamed of working with her. So she is doing 2 pieces. I will have some of her work on the screen so you can get an idea of her artwork. But she's going to be doing 2 pieces. One, like I said, is completed, but it is mildly spoilery, so I can't share it. So her artwork's incredible, and I can't wait for all of you to get to see her art. Also, I'm going to share some artwork for the individual who did the cover art. I'm not going to yet show the cover art itself because the design portion, even though the artwork itself is done, the design portion still needs to be done, meaning the text and other such things. So I do have just the image on my Patreon. If you'd like to see it, I'll have my Patreon linked. But this individual who did the cover art, I'll have their art on the screen. They're great. A lot of you have probably seen their artwork from the Call to Adventure Stormlight Archive game and other things as well. They've kind of had their art, I think, shared quite a bit in certain fandoms, in certain fandom communities. And I may or may not have been sharing their artwork a lot in thumbnails this year just because I really wanted to get their artwork out there, and in the description bar of those videos, their artwork is linked. But anyway, they're incredible. And then the lovely person who did some of the sketch art from the first book. I did some of the artwork in the first book myself. I'll put that on the screen as well. I might have a piece in the second one. That's up in the air though. But regardless, she did the page break art, and then she did the monster art in the first book, and she is going to be back doing a few other things. There is a new page break art piece that will be included, and then maybe not so much monster art, but something that's not a human either is going to be included that she's going to be doing, and I can't wait because she is so incredibly talented. But I do want to say that for, if you don't know, the page break art, the artwork itself has a tie to the country that you're currently in with certain characters. It's epic fantasy, so the characters are across different countries. And whenever there's a page break, instead of having just like some kind of swirl or something like that, whatever country they're in, there will be a symbol that is representative of that country. And the chapter beginnings always have the part of the map that you are in. So you always kind of know the area. You get that little reference point. So you have the character that you're with, where they're at, and then in page breaks, you kind of have this cool little representation. So that page break art is what she's been doing. And this next one is not going to be for a new country, but it is going to be for a different city within one of the countries. And it just is so distinct that I felt like it needed its own symbol. So I'm really excited because her artwork is phenomenal. I hope that answers a fair amount of the questions that you might have about the updates regarding book 2. So hopefully, like I said, hopefully that you have some more information, and I will try to update you as I have information to share. Now, for the very end of the video, the last thing I'll say, a little bit of the don't use Home Depot for window replacements story. I'm going to keep this very brief because I don't feel like going on and on and on because I don't want to end on an angry note. But if you don't know, a few things to note. I live in a mobile home. When in 2020, when the pandemic happened, I had moved in with my dad to be his full-time caretaker. He did pass away, and it was still 2020, and there was kind of this, oh my gosh, what do we do? Where do we go? And my husband and I ultimately thought it made the most sense to stay here. This place is a lot older and it does need a lot of fixing up, which we were fine with. And so we have been gradually fixing it up. Also, I technically have lived on and off in this house since I was 10 because my parents split up when I was a kid, and my dad moved into this place not too long after my parents split up, as it was what he could afford. You know, it's mobile home. Mobile homes generally are more affordable. So he moved into this place and he was gradually fixing it up, and he did so much. He added on rooms, a back patio. He had made the landscaping basically all himself. He did so much to the house. So I liked the idea of continuing on with fixing the place up. And it's kind of like this fun way to honor my dad's memory. And one of the things that we were like, okay, this is probably going to be the last of the ones that aren't really fun but necessary of fixing up, or, you know, improvements, that's a better way to put it. The last non-fun improvement would be new windows. And because the place is a mobile home, it has it doesn't do great. The windows are really old, and I live in a very, very hot state. It gets up to 120 degrees in the summer, and the reason we were saying this is probably the last necessary improvement, but not fun, is because it's not like getting the house painted or something like that, which is a little bit more of an exciting thing to do. It was like, nobody's really going to see the difference. The only people who are going to really recognize the difference is us, because the house will be cooler. Because, oh my gosh, were our payments for our air conditioning so expensive. In certain months, it was, because the house payment's pretty inexpensive because it's a mobile home. So there were months where the air conditioning bill was basically as much as the house payment. That's how bad the windows were in this house, how much the heat was just going on out. Sometimes there would be like pops between the wall and the window where air was just going out, stuff like that. So all we wanted to have done were window replacements. And I want to repeat that. Window replacements. And it's very clear what a replacement is. It is you pop out the old window and you pop in the new window to an existing frame. You do not need to cut into anything. It's not a remodel. It's nothing like that. It's literally just take the old window out and put the new window in. That is it. And what ended up happening is, and this is why I feel like beginning of the year, actually, none of you probably could tell, but beginning of the year was pretty stressful because this was going on for months. So what they did is they took the old windows out, and then they removed our J-molds, which you probably are like, I don't know what that is. Maybe some of you do. Maybe some of you are really into home improvement stuff. But they removed that, which was so unnecessary, and also there's now like nothing for the window. It doesn't matter. So anyway, so they took that out and they cut into the siding of our house, and I'll insert a picture, and then they put the new windows in, and then they put in some flashing tape, and they called it a day. So they left, and I was like, are they coming back? And my husband's like, they said they were done. And I was like they're done, but some other guys are coming out to do what's going on here? So our neighbor, who is a contractor, which, hey, if you have contractors in your life, they will tell you when something is messed up. So our neighbor, who also I've known basically since I was 10, came over to look because we're like, what do we need to do still? They said this was done. And he was astounded at what they did to our house. And fun fact, it was for 8 large windows on 3 of the 4 main walls of our house. It was basically all of our main windows. And again, they literally cut in to where you can just pull the siding off the wall. And so he was like, let me be here when you call them back to show them what happened, and like email them right away so that they have before and after shots, and tell them because they need to come out and fix this. They need to make this right. So he was here when they came out. First off, the person who came out was not even on site when the job was done. So I feel like that's already a problem. And then second, they started arguing with and were extremely hostile toward our neighbor, and they were instantly like, oh, well, what's your license? I need to see your, like, all this really aggressive behavior. I think because they knew. I think they looked at the windows and thought, oh my gosh, what have we done? And so they're trying to just fake it till you make it. And it's like, you can't do that. It's obvious you messed up. To anybody with eyes. Literally, all that was supposed to happen was new windows get put into the frame. That's it. That's all that was supposed to happen. And we have cuts and gashes all over all of our walls. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So, well, it does. But anyway, so they were really aggressive toward our neighbor and so rude to him, and it was like my worst nightmare because I was like, I hope they come out and they admit like, okay, well, we're going to take care of this for you, and then they take care of it for us, or at the very least they say they'll take care of it for us, even if they try to technically like work around the problem and they're not really trying to do it, whatever, right? At least have the false front of saying you're going to fix it. Don't just instantly start arguing with, because they turned to our neighbor, they're like, well, then what would you have done? And he's like, I literally have replaced the windows on my own house. I did it myself. You want me to go show you what we would have done? And the guy's just like, you need to calm your guy down. And I'm like, oh my gosh, no, this is such a nightmare. So long story short, they never really fixed the windows. Isn't that fun? That's a fun way to end it, right? Here's what they ended up doing. So that guy insisted, oh, you just need to put trim over it. And our neighbor was like, no. And I even told the guy, because my dad worked on houses pretty much my whole life. So I'm not an expert, but I know some stuff. And I'm like, no. The trim would have been cosmetic. We didn't have trim before. And also, you're saying I need to put trim over the gashes in my wall with literally nothing underneath. No, that's not how it works. You took out all, the reason this is so important is they took out all of the weatherproofing. So if we have damage from rain, which in the front used to have like an awning over the windows, they had to take that off and they couldn't put it back on because the gashes were so big that their solution involved building custom 6-inch wide trim, like half a foot around every side of the window. And the awning's no longer there. So now there's even more likelihood of when we get our crazy storms, which Arizona does get intense storms. So then the likelihood of weather damage is so much worse as a result of it. Not just so, like, if they hadn't even at least come out this second time, I mean, to the point I'm at in the story, then what the heck would we have done? We would have just had holes in our walls and the water would have just gone right into our house. So it was bizarre. Anyway, so they came out so many different times, and luckily that guy that showed up in this instance and was really aggressive and rude, he was never at our house again. And I was like, I do not want to see that man. I don't think I could keep from, I flat out told him, like, your guys cut into our walls, because he kept insisting. He was like, I don't think this is great. This is how I would have done it. And we're like, what are you talking about? Well, then you did it wrong. You don't know what you're doing then. And also, another person that I know used to work in windows, and they are looking at what was done, and they're like, I don't understand how this happened. So I already told you what the solution ended up being, which was to put this custom giant trim on. They still didn't put the flashing under the siding, the weatherproofing. They still didn't put it underneath. They had it just out. And so we're like, this isn't going to work. And also they just globbed on so much caulking around the windows, and they're like, it's done, it's sealed. And because they took out the thing that the wall and the window would like basically be secure, because they took it out initially, when you push on the siding, on one of the windows was really obvious. I could literally push on it and the wall would separate from the globs of caulking and it would just be open. So we told them, we sent them the videos, we sent them the stuff. We're like, this isn't done. What is this? And they were like, okay, we'll come out again. So then they took off their custom trim and put the flashing underneath. And we told them to do that the first time. They're like, oh, it'll be fine. And we're like, no, it won't. And they still didn't do it. Anyway, so there's believe it or not, the Cliff Notes version of that story, because it probably seems like it went on for forever. And that is just a little snippet. That's a little snippet. And you know what? After all of that, I should have probably mentioned this before saying that was it, because it's not. We flat out told them, my husband had to request off so much time from work so he could ensure that he was here. And because it's hard with the dog, because sometimes they have to come in the house, it's hard for just one of us to be home, because then we have to keep her away from the workers, but if they want to talk to us. And anyway, so he requested off additional time from work so he could be here. I can't work when they're in our house because I work from home. And this room that I'm filming in, it's just like right around the corner from where they would be doing all of their work and stuff. So I can't do recording at the very least. I can still edit, but still, I essentially couldn't work for that amount of time. So they've essentially cost us work days. This is supposed to be a one-day job, one and done, because it's an easy job. But for people that know what they're doing, to be clear. Anyway, so they cost us money in that sense, and they wasted our time a number of times. And so we were like baffled, because after doing a horrendous job, when the wall was still separating from the window, the flashing still wasn't underneath the siding, all these things, they immediately, because the way it works is you pay a certain amount up front, and then once the job is completed, you then pay what's left. And they immediately after they left, the one day when they still had all these other things they were supposed to fix, immediately we got a call from their corporate people, basically, finance people, trying to get us to pay the remainder. And we're like, oh, it's not done. We just told them it wasn't done, because it wasn't. And the guy who was in charge of the whole project, whose name is Brian. So Brian, I was like, give me the phone. When my husband was talking to him, I was like, I want to talk to Brian. So I was like, hi, so here are the and I was telling him everything that was still wrong. And he tried to offer us money, basically because he was like, well, you guys still owe. And we're like, well, yeah, but you haven't finished the job. He's like, yeah, it's done. And he's never even been out, first off. So I'm like, no, it's not. And you haven't even looked over the stuff. Anywho, so he said, okay, well, I can give you not even what we still owed back to us, basically meaning like we wouldn't have to pay the rest because they caused all this damage to our house, first off, and second, because of all the time and money they wasted. But regardless, rather than being like, oh no, you know what, you don't owe us anything else, he was like, I can take off some of that. And we're like, oh my gosh. And we're like, this is probably the best we're going to get out of the situation. So he's like, let me send over a contract. You should get it probably by Monday. And when he sends over the contract, it says that if we accept this money that they're going to give us for compensation for the disaster they caused, if we accept that, then we release Home Depot of any damage that is caused as a result of all of this, and we are not allowed to talk about it. And I was like, we're not signing that. And they tried to send that same thing over 2 times, and I was like, no, we're not signing that. Anyway, so our windows look ridiculous, the trim is ridiculous, and at the very least they fixed the problem of the siding separating from the window. But now, apparently, for the rest of our lives, or at least the lives of the windows, we have to put caulking around this giant trim they made. Otherwise, if there is damage as a result of all of the damage that they put on the house, if we end up getting weather damage, then if we don't do the caulking and keep up with it, it's considered basically user error. It's considered on the customer for not having maintenance kept up on the windows. So I would say don't buy your windows from Home Depot, or at the very least, you can buy the windows, but don't have their people put them in, because not only do they not know what they're doing, maybe some do, maybe some people in some places do. However, this was such a nightmare of a situation. Pretty much nobody took accountability. Everybody who continued to come out and then did something wrong every single time. It's still not fixed, and they basically tried to shut us up by offering us money. The downside, especially to all this, because some people were like, you should get a lawyer when we were telling them what happens. To get a lawyer and all the damages to try to get all of it fixed and all this stuff, the cost of the lawyer would probably cost more than the amount of damage that they have potentially caused. So that's that situation. I said I was going to be brief so as to not end on a negative, and then I just went off for a really long time because I was reminded of all the stupidity that went down. I have, like I said, all the dates, I have everybody's names, I have exactly what happened every single day written out in an email, so it was very frustrating. That was the first few months of the year where I was just annoyed. So anyway, if you have your own home nightmare, feel free to share. This is not the first time something like this has happened, and it's very aggravating that it's not the first time, because we were so ready. We were so ready to be like, windows are in, and then finally on to something like painting the house, and then this happened and we're like, no. So anyway, like I said, feel free to let me know your crazy home stories. I would love to hear it. Thanks so much for watching, though. If there's any questions that you have regarding the book, let me know. And if you, just in general, comment whatever. I told you this video is going to be very chatty and conversational and casual. So whatever you feel like commenting, go for it. But thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you later. Bye.